Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, How Edwardian Hotels delivers a truly exceptional personalized experience for their guests. We will be hearing from Edwardian Hotels on how they successfully evolved their guest experiences to meet the growing demand for more digital interactions, as well as from Steve Morrell from ContactBabel, who will be sharing the findings of his latest Inner Circle Guide to Customer Engagement and Personalization with us. My name is Astrid Pocklington. I'm a marketing manager at Enghouse Interactive, and I will be your host for today's discussion. Let me start off with a few housekeeping announcements. The webinar will be recorded and I will be sending you the file to the recording afterwards. You can ask questions via the chat functionality within GoToWebinar. For those of you that are not that familiar with the application, I quickly show you how to do this. You simply press on the little orange button with the white arrow to expand the control panel. Then you scroll down to the question section, type in your question and hit send. We will either address your questions during the webinar or at the end. We will also be doing some polls throughout the webinar to get your opinion and to let you have your say in our discussion. There will be a few slides to share with you as part of today's presentation, and we will have our panelists joining us via webcam. And with this, I would like to introduce today's panel. Firstly, I would like to welcome Alice Chipling, Group Service Operations Manager at Edwardian Hotels London. Good morning, Alice. It's lovely to see you. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting us and asking us to speak.
You're very welcome. Would you mind quickly telling us a little bit about your responsibilities at Edwardian Hotels?
Absolutely. So I'm the Group Service Operations Manager. So I oversee essentially the front of our house operations in all of our hotels. That includes guest relations, concierge, and I also oversee our contact center. So our contact center is primarily dealing with reservation sales, customer service, and all things guest experience.
Fantastic, thank you. So next I would like to welcome Michael Marini, Director of Information Technology at Edwardian Hotels London. Now, Michael, you've told me that you've been with Edwardian Hotels for an impressive 24 years. Tell us a little bit more about what you do. I mean, I bet your role has evolved considerably over the last, well, nearly 2.5 decades.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I still remember my first day in 1997. We had just started introducing PCs with Windows 3.11 or something like that. So yeah, that's how old I am. Yeah, it has evolved a lot. We are a company that believes in technology as an enabler and automation wherever possible to make life easier for our employees and our guests and enable our employees to be better hosts to our guests. So that's what I have been doing for the last 24 years, working very closely with our operations team, like Alice here, who is one of our stars in operations, who is soon going to become an expert in technology as well. I'm working on that.
Thank you, Michael. We are also very happy for Steve Morrell, Managing Director of Contact Center Industry Expert and Analyst ContactBabel, to join us this morning. Good morning, Steve. I hope you're well.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Could you perhaps say a few words about what ContactBabel does?
Yeah, sure. We're a UK and US contact center analyst firm. We also look at customer experience, and most of the stuff that we do, we based on large-scale surveys with hundreds of contact centers and thousands of consumers each year. So my presentation will be based on one of our newer reports today.
Fantastic, thank you. And last but not least, a very warm welcome to Jeremy, who's our VP International Marketing here at Enghouse Interactive. Good morning, Jeremy. Yeah, if you could perhaps introduce yourself and Enghouse Interactive to our listeners.
Yeah, sure. Well, likewise, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to Edwardian and ContactBabel for being part of the event today. You know, we've worked with Steve at ContactBabel for quite a long time, and I think ContactBabel, unlike many other analyst firms, the research and data is all driven in very near real time from real people that are sat in a contact center. So I think the quality of the research that comes out of Steve's organization is second to none. And I think the story of Edwardian as we go through it today will be one that resonates with an awful lot of people. We all used to use hotels and are probably all desperate to start using them again. So I think that will be a great story. In terms of Enghouse, you know, Enghouse is a company that's been around for over 30 years, focused on customer interaction management, contact centers, customer service, that type of thing. You know, so we, again, a global company with many different customers and partners around the world. So with that, I'll hand back to you, Astrid.
Fantastic, thanks very much. Well, and without further ado, let me hand over to Steve, who will set the scene for our discussion today by laying down some important facts and figures in regards to customer engagement and personalization across channels. Over to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so let's have a look at the report we'll be taking this from today. So this is called the Inner Circle Guide to Customer Engagement and Personalization. So that's driven from surveys of 200 UK contact centres and 1,000 UK customers. And like most of our stuff, it's available free download at ContactBabel.com. So that's my plug out of the way. Before we start though, it might be interesting if we have a look at a poll question for you. So hopefully you'll think you know, personalization is pretty important to customer service offering, but I want to pass it over to Astrid if you'd like to have a look at these and let us know how important do you think personalization will be to your future customer service offering?
Yes, thank you, Steve. So I've launched the poll and would like to ask our audience to take their pick. Do you think it is critically important, important, of limited importance, unimportant, or don't know? I can see people are voting fairly quickly. I give it another few seconds before I close the vote. Okay. Thank you all. Let's close the vote and let's have a look at the results. Steve, what do you make of this? Well,
I am very glad to see that. So we're looking at 64% say critically important, 29 importance, and 7% of limited importance. We hope to persuade those 7% otherwise. Yeah, so the first slide actually compares those figures that you've just done there to what we did on our survey of the 200 UK businesses. So it's quite a busy slide this, but the important thing is on the right-hand bar on each chart, which shows you the proportion of overall. And in fact, the people on this webinar think that personalization is more important than the, if you like, the industry as a whole, which is great to see. You guys obviously ahead of the curve. We had 36% critically important there, 46 important, and 17 of limited importance. And you know, it's good to see that nobody actually said it was unimportant, so that's super. Breaking those down a bit more, we've got the vertical markets on the left-hand side. So have a look there, see if you can pick out your particular sector. Those in the retail sector place the most importance on personalization, whereas those in manufacturing and public sector were a bit more lukewarm about this. And on the right-hand side, if we're looking at the findings by company revenue, pretty much all commercial organizations, so profit revenue-driven organizations, placed a great deal of importance on personalization. But the kind of, if you like, the non-profits, the non-commercials, like the public sector there, for example, is a good example, they were much less likely to be doing so. So if we have a look at the next slide, we can kind of draw the conclusion from that personalization is really seen as in many cases a profit and revenue generator. So by making the customer feel like you know them and presenting relevant information and offers to them, a business can create positive emotion in their customers that goes kind of beyond however long the interaction itself lasts for. And this is a really important point and something I'm going to come back to a bit later in the report. Sorry, a bit later in the presentation, talking about reports here. So what we're looking for with personalization, I think it's about aimed at not only winning business now, but also keeping it into the future and hopefully making advocates out of the existing customer base. And that kind of drives things like NPS, customer retention, lifetime value, as well as, customer satisfaction. It's the important things that everybody measures, and, senior management look really take a great deal of attention to. It is difficult to measure this, but a company that creates positive emotion in a customer is kind of banking that loyalty for the future. So, there's goodwill that if anything goes wrong, in future interactions, as often does, the customers are much more likely to be forgiving of the company because they've had, so many strong positive experiences in the past. They're willing to overlook, the occasional mistake. And I think it's also important to note that personalization really helps in the fight against the natural impersonality of the contact center. So what I mean by that is, as a customer, we can't see the people you're talking to unless, of course, you're using video, which is up and coming. But you probably haven't talked to that person before. You can't see what's really happening in the contact center, or often even when the call's going to be answered. So there's a lot of barriers to personalization in the contact center already. So I think we might have to make an effort to kind of get over those things. So I'll look next at kind of how to personalize a lot of contact centers. The chart there really kind of shows that the majority of contact centers don't provide any customer information, personalized customer information at all to the agent. Of those that do, it's really about kind of customer history, and that might be accessible, it might not be, it might just be a big cut and paste job that the agent has kind of wade their way through. So at the moment, really, I think really still quite at the beginning of this. So if you're not on board the personalization bandwagon so far, then you really haven't missed it. So a few things that you need to be able to personalize successfully. We need a clean and preferably a large pool of customer data, especially if you're using AI, that's accessible in a timely fashion by any person or indeed any kind of automated system that needs it. Segmenting customer types and creating personas, it provides a starting point for understanding the requirements of a particular customer, which kind of makes successful outcomes more likely. To do this, we need various customer identification techniques there, like things like IVR, CLI, maybe even voice recognition, preferably requiring a low effort from the customer themselves. And that can then allow other systems to decide how best the particular customer can be served. Kind of going a bit more deep and a bit more advanced here, the automated analysis of large pools of customer data means that recognizing likely customer intent is possible. And that also then allows you to predict the next best action. That's a realistic goal, having a look at what's worked for other customers before. So give an example, an infrequent caller, somebody who normally does stuff through automation, if they're ringing on the same day as their flight, they probably need to check something or make a change pretty urgently. And just kind of elaborating on a travel example there. So let's say if a passenger misses the plane, then they're then likely to engage in a long, complicated, and probably quite emotional discussion with a live agent, either at the airport or in a contact center, involving alternatives, connections, payments, that sort of thing. So if I'm missing the last call from the plane, the systems know this, and the customer is immediately provided with a message, so an SMS or a WhatsApp or whatever, detailing the various options available to them, which they can select and rebook at once. That's seriously personalized. It's very convenient. It's far less stressful for the customer, and it's also significantly going to reduce the cost of service to the business. But perhaps the key point here is that the customer is really going to feel that the airline is looking out for them personally, and that's going to create a long-term loyalty out of pretty negative experience of missing the plane. So successful personalization needs the ability to understand all the elements of the customer's history, regardless of the channel, and it needs your agents and your systems to have the kind of capability to provide consistent levels of service across all of the channels required. You need the ability not only to ask and measure what customers feel about their experience, but then act upon this immediately. So, personalization is about being a timely thing as well. And, the negative feedback there, and negative experience, you can get a successful customer rescue. Again, it leads to long-term advocacy and brand loyalty. So what I'd like to do now is have a look a bit more about this, the high emotion thing that I've been talking about here. This is where business has really won and lost. We've seen a lot of research that shows that repeat business and high levels of NPS are more associated with positive emotion than with a successful outcome or low levels of customer effort. Even those two things, outcome and effort, are really important, but it's a positive emotion is really, really key to repeat business. And as I've said, that just because a caller enters a conversation with negative emotions doesn't mean they have to end it that way. The contrast and emotion of the big problem being successfully resolved can actually produce a higher positive net emotion than if there'd been no major negativity at any stage of the interaction. So, every problem is actually an opportunity, if you like. And we talk in our reports about moment of truth. I think we got that phrase off McKinsey. And this often occurs when the customer has an unexpected problem or a high emotional stake. And that's the time where long-term loyalty is won and lost, depending on how it's handled. For this report, I had a bit of a dabble in behavioural science, which is pretty interesting subject. My daughter's doing it at university, actually. It's a lot more interesting than what I did. And one of the things she mentioned that I thought was interesting and relevant to this is the peak end rule. So that's where we recall a memory based upon how we felt at a peak or a trough moment. And that biases the memory of the overall experience. Now, it's not just applicable to customer service, but it can be applied there. So that's the peak element to it. And the end element states how we feel at the end of the process will also disproportionately affect how we view the overall experience. So if you've turned a negative thing around and made it really good, that's that's going to provide a very, very strong positive emotion for the future. So I think we should all be encouraged to try to end a conversation in a really positive, upbeat note. Obviously, you guys do that already, but it's there's science behind it now, if you like. And I think we need to, if at all possible, provide the freedom for agents to act in a way appropriate to the situation. So if a high emotion interaction is happening on social media, as it often does, that gets a disproportionate amount of people, kind of venting or complaining or, banging their head against a brick wall, but it can't be handled on that channel for whatever. So maybe it needs to go through security, or it's too complex or lengthy or two-way. The agent really should be given the license to place an outbound call to that customer in real time, rather than kind of just advising them to call the contact center. It's surprising how many businesses don't do that, because it's kind of not the way the process typically works. So next, kind of bringing in multiple channels, I like to have a look at customers' use of channels. This is based on our survey of 1,000 customers. Really interesting. We look at high emotion, high urgency, and high complexity interactions and ask customers, right, okay, we'll give you a scenario on each of these: emotion, urgency, and complexity. How do you prefer to contact a business? And the thing is, channels of preference don't always match channels of use, because 2/3 of stuff that comes to a business goes through a contact center, but in a lot of the occasions, those customers have tried somewhere else first. So for example, web self-service is popular for urgent queries, email's popular for highly emotional and complaints, telephony for complex issues, but changes a lot between demographics and what the customer's trying to achieve on this. So that's something that we need to bear in mind when we're looking at personalization. It's not just a single channel job. So the next question we'd like to ask you is about the solutions that you currently use to assist you with customer personalization.
Yes, thank you, Steve. So the options here are IVR, interaction routing, video, virtual agents, chatbots, or AI-enabled agent assistance. So if you could please take your pick. Okay. So about half of our audience have voted already. Just wait a few seconds in case we get some more votes. Yes. Okay. Right, I shall be closing the poll and share the results with you. Right, Steve, does this draw a similar picture to your own research?
Yes, it would. I mean, it would have been better if we could have done multiple choice on there, but there we are. But I think what I'm going to take from this is what's the kind of key technology you're using for personalization. Absolutely, IVR. I would expect that, you know, it's used in about 80% of contact centers, often just used for simple routing of calls. But you know, it's even though it's been around for ages, it's still, you know, a really powerful way, because how can you personalize unless you know who you're talking to originally? It's interesting there to see that some people are using video. This has got massive potential. We've just written a new report on video and next gen customer contact. And for something that, to be honest, I was very cynical about for many years, the pandemic has made me see how, you know, we spend a lot of time on Zoom and, you know, at the early bit, certainly talking to family over video. And you can kind of see how that will work. So it was interesting to write that report. Of course, we've got virtual agents and chatbots here, you know, a relative minority using this, but as I'll show later, we've got some pretty interesting statistics showing how chatbots are actually helping personalization and kind of customer costs as well. So let's have a look here. I mentioned just before the poll, you know, we need an omni-channel kind of approach to this, because this chart shows you the proportion of contacts in email, web chat, and social media that require the use of another channel to be answered fully. Now, the other channel is unsurprisingly often telephony, which is why your telephony volumes are so high, because people have tried to solve their own problems either on self-service or one of the other supported channels, and they've not been able to do so. I mean, chat there seems to be more popular or more effective at handling interactions first time than, you know, for social media, which is not particularly special at all. So why do people escalate? Well, it's often driven by requirements that need to be reassured, to escalate, to go through security, etc., things I talked about before. So, you know, while other digital channels are very popular, and we can see, you know, we've done the surveys, they're very popular with customers, especially web chat. They aren't that great at first contact resolution at the moment. So, you know, we need to consider an omni-channel approach here, because customers, they've indicated to us, really don't want to have to explain themselves across a new channel. That's something they're finding increasingly frustrating. So if we look at, I mentioned web chat and automation, this is certainly worthy of, we move to the next slide, please. This is certainly worthy of consideration. So on the left-hand side here, we have the breakdown of web chats. This is the proportion that require another channel to be answered fully. So the green is good, so that means fewer than 10% has to be handled by another channel. The red is bad, effectively. So you can see from 2017, we've seen some pretty significant improvements in the web chats being handled first time. And if you look at this stuff on the right-hand side here, you've got the use of automated solutions or chatbots. So whether it's agent assistance, so the suggesting answers to the agent, and the agent looks at those and say, yeah, that's fine, or maybe we need to tweak it a bit. And the ones in orange there are the ones through kind of pure chatbots that don't touch an agent at any part at all. And there's really quite a big correlation there, I think. Obviously, correlation doesn't mean causation, but you know, I think there's a pretty big hint there that web chat, an automated web chat, is actually improving the number of chats resolved first time, and that's obviously having a major impact on businesses, costs, and call volumes and unnecessary calls, and giving you a lot more time to actually handle those queries that you need to speak to a customer with. Okay, I think that's my presentation done for now.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Steve. That was very insightful. And now I would like to address Alice and Michael with a few questions in order to find out a bit more about how customer service has evolved at Edwardian's hotel and hospitality business over the last few years, and yeah, how you manage to engage your guests in a way that turns them into happy and loyal customers. And I'm sure you will be introducing us to Edward, your award-winning chatbot as well. Well, the first question I would like to ask you, I mean, providing guests with a VIP service surely requires a quick and competent response to any kind of inquiry. How do you ensure that your guests receive the personal care and attention that they expect?
Well, I think it's really important when we are servicing our guests that first and foremost, we know roughly what kind of query they might have. That always helps. And then when we find out that information, getting them through to the right person with the right information and empowering whoever it is that is answering that query to be able to answer it without referral, answering it quickly and efficiently for the guest. So within the contact center, what works really well for us is determining before the guest comes through to an agent what their query might be, and we do this via the IVR, as Steve pointed out. A lot of people are using that, and then once we know that information, we can make sure that it's going to go through to the appropriate agent, and our smart routing enables that call or that interaction to go through to the right person. And then when that person does receive it, finding we give information to that agent about the caller as well. So if we recognize the caller, which we do via the phone number recognition, we have our integration with our CRM and Salesforce, which will then pop information to the agent about that specific guest. So we're able to know the name of the guest, if they're associated with any company or travel agent, if they've stayed with us before, when they stayed, what rate they booked on, what promotion they might have booked on previously with us as well. And all of that information really helps us to personalize the call. And even if we don't know who that person is because they haven't interacted with us before, at least knowing the type of query that they are calling us with, we're then able to give specific information to the agent that is going to help with that query as well. So they can answer without referring, without popping the caller on hold to find out information. It's all there in the screen in front of them. One of the other fantastic things about Enghouse is as well, we're given a full 360 picture of all of the guests' previous interactions with us as well. So we can see when they called, what their query was when they last called, and who they spoke with as well. So finding out as much information about the guest and having that available to the agent, I think is really key and important for us to then be able to deliver that personalized service and answer that query as quickly and efficiently for the guest as possible.
Thank you, Alice. You mentioned guests calling a few times. Is the phone really still the most popular communication channel for your guests to contact you, or have you perhaps seen a shift to other channels in recent years?
We definitely have seen a shift, and that's actually one of the reasons why we chose to invest in Enghouse as a contact center solution. We previously had a call center, but we saw very much that guests were looking for other ways of interacting with us. Over the years, our call volumes have decreased in the way of more online interactions. I think, as Steve pointed out, those quick and simple requests where guests can self-service themselves have become a lot more popular. So in Enghouse, we're able to handle not just phone queries, but also SMS, text queries, chat, and also email, all within the one solution as well. Obviously, we were dealing with email previously, but having it within the one solution means that you're able to escalate between the different types of interactions really easily as well. So then the guest has the choice based on their own preference, but also at which stage that different channel is going to be most appropriate and effectively service the guest in the best way as well.
Understand. That's interesting, Michael. I mean, since you've been with Edwardian for so many years, have you seen any particular communication channels that have evolved over the last few years or perhaps months?
Well, definitely evolved over the last few years and really accelerated over the last 18 months. So as you have mentioned, we introduced Edward, our AI virtual host, in 2016. And it started taking off gradually. So back then, there was still a distrust of chatbots in general. They are still pretty useless in most organizations because they haven't got the actual built-in AI that they claim they have, and also they haven't got the data that AI requires to learn. So one of the most important things that I would suggest in being able to achieve everything that Alice has been describing here is to start with data, because whatever you're going to show the agents so that they know who the caller is and anticipate their needs and appear as if they know them, and with time they actually start to really know them, is data. So you have to collect data, you have to segment it, analyze it, so that we really provide that personalized service. We know this person always asks for a room with a particular view. We know this person prefers a specific room in a specific hotel. They shouldn't have to tell us every time. We should know that information. Now, one person cannot know all the information about every guest who stays with us, but we enable that by giving them the information. So that's on one hand, just to add to what Alice was saying, and the technology we like to work with is the technology that makes that possible for us via APIs and connections to existing CRM systems, etc., and also technology that enables us to take information from, in this case, Enghouse, and push it to the other communication channels that we have in place. And this is where it was very seamless, with these guys, with Enghouse. Basically, the API was up and running in like half a day. We were seeing data flowing between our data warehouse and Enghouse and vice versa. Communication, back in 2016, we introduced Edward, the chatbot, and we noticed that it came out of a need of initially giving the guest the ability to check in online rather than have to come to the desk, because a lot of people want that type of self-service, and that number of people is growing. And so we did that, and we noticed that people who received a text message from us with a link saying to them, click on this link and you'll be able to check in online, started replying to that link and asking questions. So this is not something that we have imposed on our guests. It's clear that our guests were asking for this type of communication tool. And out of that, Edward, the chatbot, was born. And I can tell you, I'm looking at some stats here, even 2020, where, we've hardly had any hotels open. We have received over 36,000 communications between guests and Edward.
Wow, that's fantastic. So what are these inquiries? What are the sort of typical requests that Edward has to handle?
Absolutely. So these inquiries are inquiries where the guests don't really need to call the contact center. This is what we mean by self-service. Things like, is my room ready? They don't have to pick up the phone and call a contact center. It doesn't add any value to the guests to hear that from a human being. And also it ties up resources when those agents could be doing something much more important than just answering questions like that. What's my room number? Do you have a car park, etc. So these are the type of inquiries where guests want information, want it quickly, and doesn't require a human being to make an effort to do something for them. This is perfect channel. So what's my room number? Is my room ready? Does my booking include breakfast? And quite often, most of this information is after they have already had the communication with the contact center and they made the booking, etc. Now they need the pre-arrival, during the stay, and after the stay service. For that, the first stop is the Edward, the chatbot, and then Edward works with his colleagues in the contact center. So if Edward is unable to answer the question or provide a particular service, we'll reach out to Alice's team.
Okay.
And they will take over and give the correct answer or provide the service. And each time, Edward learns from those interactions. So
Okay.
when we started in 2016, he could deal with something like 900 different topics. Today is over 1,600 topics. So this is why, like you were saying before, this ability to have an omni-channel communication, customer service is very important these days.
Yeah, I mean, that was very interesting what you're saying, but I could imagine some of our listeners are kind of raising their hand and saying, well, you know, I've used WebChat in the past before, and, you know, I got frustrated because my query didn't get answered quick enough. I had to wait a long time, and in the end, I wasn't able to resolve the issue. How do you respond to that? How do you make sure that when your guests answer questions via Edward, the chatbot, that they do get the relevant response in a very quick and prompt fashion?
Well, Edward takes about 3 seconds to answer, and
Wow.
It's not, now it has grown into a tool that not only answers questions but does things for you. So you could say, Edward, can you please add breakfast to my room? And Edward takes 3 seconds to do that and update your reservation. You know, what's the phone number? Because now I want to call the contact center. 3 seconds, here is the phone number. And it's evident with the feedback that we have had on things like TripAdvisor. There is some beautiful feedback there. People think Edward is a human being, you know, and as you can see there, you know, Edward kindly secured me a late checkout, was keen to help with anything, and he has become like a member of Alice's team, a member of the contact center team, works together with that team, assists them and assists the guests, and they help Edward as well continue to learn.
So it becomes obvious that self-service really is an important requirement for your guests nowadays to interact with you.
Absolutely.
And be able to self-serve. And I mean, you've given us a couple of examples already. How do you make sure that those self-service interactions stay personalized and are customized to the individual's needs?
Well, this is what we mean by the data. So the same data that is available to our contact center team, the same data that pops up in a screen in Enghouse when a customer calls, Enghouse passes the call ID, the phone number, to our CRM system. Our CRM system says, okay, I know who this person is, and then passes important information to the Enghouse system. So that screen pops up and you can see this guest is whatever, VIP, works for this company, books via this travel agent, average spend in our hotels so far is X amount, lifetime value is so-and-so. And that information is very quick to enable that contact center employee to know what type of caller we are dealing with, how to direct the conversation. We have got behind the scenes in Enghouse APIs that says, okay, if this criteria matches, then we want this call to be directed to this group of agents because they deal, for example, with our VIPs, for instance. Okay. Edward has access to the same information, so it behaves in exactly the same way, just like any other contact center agent. It looks at that information, it digests it, and then it decides on how to provide a service to that guest.
And you both sort of touched upon Edward's ability to learn as well just now there. Could you maybe go into that a little bit deeper and tell us how you would use Edward to analyze customer intent and find out why your guests are contacting you, and how you then use that information to enhance the service that you provide?
Yeah, so a very simple, I'll give you a very simple, there are so many examples, but I'll give you a very simple one that pops into your head. We send out confirmations of bookings. We send an email, here's your confirmation, a picture of the hotel, confirmation number, somewhere in there, dear Mr. Blah, blah, we look forward to your confirmation number is, your arrival date is this, your booking includes breakfast. First question they ask Edward is, does my booking include breakfast? Okay. So now we're saying, does anybody really look at these confirmations that we send out? If they do they read far enough to see what the booking includes? And if they don't even know that the booking includes breakfast, is breakfast really something that is influencing the decision making of these people to book in the first place? So then you start looking at that. Who are these people? How did they make the reservation? Did they book themselves or somebody else booked for them? You analyze that, and then you make some decisions, like, for example, should we continue to have this rate include breakfast or not? The confirmation that we send out, should we not bring that information further up so that people see it, because people don't like to read a lot of text and go all the way down. So this is a small example. And then we get the AI to learn as well. So you have got 100 people arriving, 50 of them don't have breakfast included. So Edward would send a message to those people and say, by the way, your booking doesn't include breakfast. We have a special offer if you wish to include breakfast for your whole stay. And then we monitor how many of those people, what's the percentage of people who say, yes, I'll have it, please add it to my, and then once you get that, you start then zooming in on the profiles of those people who said yes, and then see the others who didn't say yes and try and analyze why. How can we encourage the others to also say yes, and learn at the demographics, where they come from, how they made the reservation, and then new decisions are made based on that. And Edward continues to learn and continues to upsell and so on.
That sounds super interesting. So how do you measure the success of your service offerings? Are there specific KPIs that you report on, and have you seen improvements?
Oh, huge improvements. NPS, I know just in, I'll go by 2019, it increased by about, if I remember rightly, by about 4 points in 1 year, and it was increasing year on year. We noticed that the average spend in the hotel increased. So people who use these self-service tools, for instance, their spending was between 10% and 50% higher than people who didn't have an interaction with the self-service tools and with Edward. In one hotel, it was literally double So people were spending twice as much when they had this, because the tool is upselling to them, using the data, looking at the in-house data for the calls that they have made, when they called, etc. Did they send a text message? Using all that information to make upselling decisions. Basically, we have got lots of KPIs, average room rates, and cost savings, and so on, everything you can think of. And yes, the results are fantastic, and also a lot of very coveted industry awards that we won every single year since 2015 have been very, very encouraging and telling us that we should continue to innovate in technology.
Wow, that's yeah, sounds very encouraging. Alice, you looked as if you wanted to add something here, or?
Yes, I was just also going to say one of the other things that we'd introduced in 2019, and this goes to Steve's slide that he presented in regards to emotion, empathy, and the moment of truth. One of our other success measurements is any audits that we conduct as well. And we moved away from the traditional tick box audits of, has the agent used the guest 3 times? Did they tell you what was included in your room rate? And moved instead towards experiential assessments, so that when we are audited or we are having that feedback, it's all in regards to that emotional feeling that is produced as well. And we saw fantastic results in those audits of surprising, delighting, and feel satisfied. And that's a new way that we've chosen to measure, and that's been hugely successful on that emotional impact that we are having on the guests.
That's very interesting, and because you just mentioned emotional impact as well, that leads me to another slightly different question. With the recent restrictions that we unfortunately had to endure due to the COVID-19 pandemic, how did you maintain high levels of service while working remotely, and how did you support your home-based agents?
Well, we were really fortunate that we moved over to the Enghouse solution at the very start of the pandemic, which made remote working a lot easier. We were able to deploy the agents and support them from home really, really quickly, which was obviously really important because none of us were given any notice that this was going to happen. And it was the first time our agents were working independently in their own space. We'd never ever done that before. Very much an open plan office environment that we used to working in. So the system is very, very good at providing a view of what's happening in the contact center to the supervisors and the team leaders in the team, so they can see who's logged on, how long they've been logged on for, what interactions they're currently engaged with. They even have the ability to monitor those interactions live as they're happening, which was super important for us, because whereas usually you might be able to put someone on hold and ask a quick question, that ability's completely gone when you're working remotely. So the supervisors could listen in on any calls in that remote environment without the agent being aware if need be. If they needed any assistance, they can whisper and support the agent without the guest being aware of it. And also, if need be, they can take over the interaction entirely. So it's completely seamless from the guest point of view, but from an agent's point of view, they do feel supported, even though they are at home sat in their kitchen by themselves. We also have the vocal coach capability that runs alongside those calls, which is real-time voice analytics. And that was very, very good for the agent to be able to self-monitor their calls, because it gives you live feedback as you're interacting with the guest. It's not distracting at all because it's super small in the side of your screen, but it can monitor things like stress levels of the guest. So if the call is going slightly awry, it can alert you to that. If you are speaking over the guest and the interaction is very one-sided, it will let you know that. Also, again, with working remotely and everyone's on their own Wi-Fi, it can detect signal quality and call control. So all of that stuff, very important to make sure that we were maintaining the high levels of service that we were used to in the office environment.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alice. Well, with all the successes and fantastic results that you both listed, that makes me wonder why not more people are implementing, personalization and customer engagement solutions. So I think we should ask our audience one more time what their view is on this. So our listeners, if you could please take one last vote. The question this time is, what are the main reasons for not offering a more personalized experience? What do you think? Is it perhaps because of data privacy concerns? Perhaps there is a reluctance of customers to part with their data? Or is it perhaps down to a lack of the 360-degree view of the customer history, or a lack of understanding of customer types and personas? Or are you maybe unable to measure how customers feel about their experience? Or does it simply come down to not having enough time and budget? So if you could please take your pick. Okay. I will be closing the poll now and share the results. And yeah, over to our panelists again. Are you surprised by this result?
As it's data, I think I'll take the first stab at that. To be honest with you, I was looking at this, I thought it's going to be customer history and data. And I also thought that not enough time and budget, that normally features pretty highly, but it looks like you guys are awash with cash, which is nice. So yeah, 360-degree view of customer history, the data, it's the absolute foundation of personalization. And if you don't have that and you haven't put a project in place already, then the other things that come after it are, they literally come after it. So yeah, I think that's the key point. Gather the data, have it available, and have it solid and clean, and then you can start building upon that.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Well, now that we've discussed some of the barriers that are holding businesses back from implementing customer engagement and personalization solutions, I think it would be a good time to maybe share some tips and best practices on the subject. Perhaps Alice and Michael, would you like to start off and maybe share some advice on how to get started?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the audience is absolutely right, because as I've said, I've been doing this for 24 years. I have been to hundreds of these technology conferences where we see a lot of these tools available, but the biggest barrier is the data to start with, because a lot of these tools need data in order to enable that kind of personalized service. But it's such a shame, because data is the easiest thing to collect. You just need, seriously, in most businesses, you just need a new graduate from computer sciences, or just a kid who loves SQL databases and stuff. And all you do is you look at your transactional systems where you take orders or whatever, you go to the database and you pull the data and stick it in. Sometimes you can get just a PC with the free version of SQL database, Microsoft SQL, and start collecting the data. Once you start seeing the value and the organization starts to see the value of that data with just the very little bit you can already do with it, then you can start investing and into servers and building on top of that, or go into the cloud, which is available everywhere right now, And then you can start to invest in these tools like the contact center, AI, etc., and the value will start to show. And then you'll be able to, show the return on investment. It's really possible to do that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what everyone else has
Thanks,
got to say,
Michael.
but I find it frustrating.
I'm sure that would have been top of your list as well, Steve, to mention the data as a prerequisite.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's important to get the data clean and focus on that first, rather than the channel. So it's not about do we have a chatbot, can we do messaging, can we do this, that, and the other. It's how do we support whatever channel that comes along in the future, because there will be new ones. And I mentioned before, messaging, likes of WhatsApp, that's actually really very, very popular amongst customers now. But how many contact centers or businesses are in a position to kind of add yet another channel? There's still maybe some of them struggling with email and web chat and things like that, still trying to get the hold of that. So it's important to to have the structure, have the data behind it, and have the structure in place that you can drop individual channels on and not worry too much about what the channels actually kind of involve in terms of implementation. It's just another source of data, another source of providing service to the customer.
Thanks, Steve. Alice, anything to add to this?
Well, as I work in operations, for me, it's all about the people that are using that technology. So making sure that they find it easy to use, that it's not cumbersome to them in their day-to-day. You could introduce something absolutely fantastic. It could have all of the information in the world in it, but if the team don't like it and they don't want to use it, then it's going to have absolutely no impact on it. So that's why with all of the technology that we've introduced, we get regular feedback from the teams. So we make sure that any struggles or concerns they're having, we are adapting and making sure that they can use it to the best of the ability. And also with Edward as well, it's on a mobile phone in their pocket. It's not difficult for them to use. So the buy-in from the employees to make the most of the solutions that we're offering, for me, is super, super important.
Thanks, Alice. Jeremy, I'll let you have the final say. Anything to add from your point of view?
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, lots of people clicked on, 360-degree view of the customer, but you could also transpose in there, data, system integration, a multitude of things. And I think probably if you abstract it to a slightly higher level, a lot of organizations, I think, end up going snowblind. They get daunted by the scale and size of the problem. And that's really why we tend to sort of counsel people on moving to more of a digital by design mindset, thinking about those top, 3 to 5 customer journeys that drive the revenue into your business, the journeys that drive cost out of your business, and the ones that have a high level of regulatory compliance. Steve talked a little bit about personas and segmentation of the customer base as a starting place. And even if you just map out those top 3 journeys that drive the money into your company and do a basic segmentation of your customers, and now start to think about aligning, people, policy, process, systems, what does the optimal journey look like? Typically, when we go through that process with a customer and overlay it against what they already have, like a jigsaw puzzle, most customers already have 80–90% of the pieces of what they need to deliver amazing customer service. They just haven't got that magic glue in the middle. Michael talked about APIs, but it could also be empowerment. It can be aligning AI. Michael talked about continuous improvement, using the technology to educate and learn yourself. Why is that journey going slow? Why is it breaking down? How do we improve things? So I think, Steve at the start talked about moments of truth. And I think for most organizations, unfortunately, that moment of truth has been forced upon them in the last 15 months. Before, it was okay that people, bought stuff through a digital native platform like Amazon and received a certain level of digital personalization. And then, had a different set of expectations for a bricks or clicks and mortar business. Nowadays, everything's online, everything's digital. So the customer expectation has shifted enormously in a very short period of time. So I think the window for many, quote marks, traditional businesses to jump on board with this is narrowing. And the best place to start is to go back to that digital by design mindset and just start to map out some basic journeys and build it up from there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeremy. Unfortunately, it's we are up the hour, so we've reached the end of this very engaging discussion. If you, our audience, are interested in reading more about the subject, then I would like to refer you to the Inner Circle Guide to Customer Engagement and Personalization by ContactBabel. Also of interest could be two other reports recently published by ContactBabel. One, the Inner Circle Guide to Video and Next Generation Customer Contact, and secondly, the UK Customer Experience Decision Makers Guide. And as we touched upon the subject of supporting contact center agents during their transition to an increasingly hybrid work environment, you might also value these other two pieces of research here. Mind Matters reports on the results of our agent well-being survey conducted in February this year, and supporting contact center remote working with team collaboration tools is an ebook documenting a survey carried out in January 2021 by ContactBabel, sponsored by Enghouse Interactive, investigating how and why UK businesses are using team collaboration tools and looking at the effectiveness of their use in a customer-facing environment. And I would also like to make you aware of our next webinar happening on the 14th of July, when we will be launching Enghouse Smart Quality. And quickly before we go, let me remind you of these fantastic offers by Edwardian Hotels. If you are dining out, you could enjoy 15% off any food items of the a la carte menu. This offer is valid from Sundays to Thursdays at participating restaurants. And, you know, why not stay over and enjoy 15% of their best available room rates for stays up until the 31st of October, if booked by the 19th of July. I will let you know how to redeem these discounts in the follow-up email that I will be sending you shortly after this webinar. And now all is left for me to say is a huge thank you to our panelists for this interesting and engaging discussion. It's been a real pleasure listening to your insights on the topic of customer engagement and personalization. And thank you, of course, to our audience for joining us today. I hope you found it worthwhile. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.